I just have it on mute. So, yeah,
Okay.
We're on, we're live.
Okay, good morning. This is the March 13th meeting of the IDA in Allegheny County. I'd like to welcome you all here. We're going to switch around our agenda a little bit. That seems to be our custom, but as things come up, we need to deal with them in a timely fashion. So we are going to ask our guests to speak first, or do you want to wait for your partner Henry to come on, or?
I just re-forwarded the link. I'm gonna text him just to make sure. He might be on a call that's just wrapping up. So if we could just have a brief moment, I'm gonna text him right now so you all aren't held up.
You know,
Sure,
we could
okay.
do the board minutes.
Sure, we can,
Finances.
we'll take care of other things. Let's go on to the minutes of the last meeting then. That would be the February 13th meeting. We'll need a motion to accept it and discussion, if there is any. So we'll take a motion to accept those minutes. Thank you, Doug. Second by John. Thank you. Are there any comments or changes that need to be made there? If not, we'll go ahead with the vote then. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And that is unanimous. Okay. Would you like us to do any?
We could do the finances, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move along to the treasurer's report. First is the abstract report with the expenses. So we'll take a look at that and we'll accept the motion to accept that.
I'll move.
Okay, thank you, John. Second on that.
I'll second.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, are there any questions about it? If not, we'll take vote on that. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's accepted. Thank you. Henry, pop in when you are ready.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue. Tim was just wrapping up, and Tim Ahrens from New Energy Equity is here to discuss the McCormick project, if the board's ready to hear from us.
Yes, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Thank you very much. So.
Could you introduce
Henry
yourself?
Sommerfeld.
Did both of you just introduce yourselves? Thank you.
Henry Sommerfeld from Hodgson Russ, appearing with a waiver from the IDA. And here with Tim Ahrens from New Energy Equity. And I'll turn it over to Tim to talk about the project generally and lay out some of the timeline and address some of the unorthodox aspects that are coming before the IDA, and explain why we're asking the IDA to grant our application for benefits.
Okay, go right ahead.
Hi, nice to meet you all. Like Henry said, Tim Ahrens with New Energy Equity. New Energy Equity is based out of Annapolis, Maryland. We have an office in Horseheads, New York, and I reside out of the Albany, New York area. I've been working in and across New York State on renewable energy projects for 15 years now. And so I appreciate you all taking the time to hear us out. So the McCormick project is in the town of Andover, and it's technically split between half of it falls about in the town and half of it falls within the village. Because it's a 5 megawatt AC project, so it's the maximum size that you could build or interconnect for a community solar project. It's got about 12,000 panels. Is to date, the kind of how we got to this point here is there's been a lot of moving parts with regards to property taxes over the past few years, and it actually mimics the development timeline quite well. There's been changes in the, and they all coincide together, right? And so during this time, New Energy Equity, we're monitoring those regulations and quite frankly, through that process, it's been a little bit dynamic and we've evolved our philosophy. So the project was originally permitted by another company prior to being sold to New Energy Equity. But at that time, which was about 2021, the project was proceeding under the assumptions of the more traditional securing 487 pilot agreements, right? That developer reached out to local taxing jurisdictions and to begin that process. It was around that time that the new tax law was introduced. And so it was still not certain as to which direction that things were going to go. So shortly after that time, there was a temporary restraining order put in place on that new tax law, and it froze up the ability to be able to use that tax model. But so we were still at the mindset that a pilot was the best way to go. But a year later, that temporary restraining order was resolved. That was about spring of 23. And the assessment approach was moving forward and it seemed to make sense. So in July of 23, or actually it kind of a little bit before that, I take that back, kind of in the early part of 2023, New Energy Equity completed its acquisition of the project and they started construction. Project completed construction, and that construction started in July, and that project construction was completed at the end of 2023. But interestingly enough, the project is sitting there and not able to interconnect yet because of National Grid. National Grid has had staffing issues in the area, just general timing, and that project today still sits there not interconnected to the grid because of National Grid. And at that time too, as we were working, it was our understanding that the project would not be assessed until it was fully operational. Again, which was being delayed by National Grid. So kind of fast forward to spring of 2024, another model came out or they had updated the assessment model, and the project's still not operational. And with each evolution of the model, it was changing, it was dynamic, and was making investors, uncertain that this is really the way to go and this is the way to use these things, right? So that investor uncertainty really drove that mindset, as I mentioned earlier, of kind of switching the perspective in which we were coming from. And so to hedge against that uncertainty, and that the other fact is that this model can change annually, just like the assessment methodology could change annually. And that was too much uncertainty for the investors, and they want us to secure the maximum most secure tax vehicle that we could, which would be a 25-year IDA pilot. And we are uncertain of any other methodology to obtain a 25-year pilot. The 487 route is a 15-year cap. And so this is how we wound up in front of you. And just to bring up another little bit of information here is we engaged Hodgson Russ on this opportunity back this summer, and so it's been an evolving process. We appealed the original assessment because there was a mistake made, and that is actually, I will say it's resolved, although it formally has to be tightened up in the paperwork, but we came to a conclusion there as well too. And then furthermore, in March 25, just a few days ago, about a week ago now, a judge ruled that this new tax assessment model was unconstitutional, and it further put an exclamation point on the uncertainty of that approach, further validating the reason why we're here to secure a long-term IDA with you all. So hopefully I threw a lot of information out there, but hopefully that timeline makes sense.
So basically, that's why you're coming to us now for a pilot after it's been constructed, because of all the different changes in the tax laws, right?
Correct.
Okay, because I've talked to both and I know you have too, both the supervisor and the mayor, and they're all for going through and finalizing this pilot processes. And I know they already have host agreements that you're going to finally sign as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, I've been in communication with them, as you stated, and they picked up the phone. There was a change in leadership in the town, but they both have been communicative, and we've been having good conversations. And in fact, I think both of them had board meetings this past week on that, and I'll be closing the loop with them before the end of the week.
Yeah, because that's the only thing that we require to do a pilot is that the community has a host agreement eventually signed before we actually finalize the pilot.
Understood. Yeah, understood, and I'll continue to push on that end.
Okay.
We're looking to close those out, Craig. I understand they had meetings, might have been yesterday or this week, where they were just gonna, hopefully approve them or at least re-engage on the discussion, given that there had been, sort of a lapse of discussion as internally, New Energy Equity was figuring out how to navigate, the complexities of the tax model and which pilot route to go. And once they retained us last year, I think we got them, situated and on the right track.
So it sounds like it's taking you quite a while. So what is the situation at the project itself? Is it now operational? Is it finished being constructed, or where is it at?
So our part of the project, everything that you can physically see, the modules, the fencing, the road, all that is done. National Grid has been the holdup, and National Grid needs to physically take our wires and connect them to their wires, for lack of a better explanation, and they haven't done that. There's been a few issues, and we stepped in recently, and I say issues, I mean, it's just really been timing on their end and resources. But we finalized the last piece of paperwork about 2 or 3 weeks ago with an adjacent neighbor that they required. And they are mobilizing this month to begin that construction. Likely what will happen is that construction will take place over the next couple months to make those connections. Then what we do is we go through a series of testing, right? Where we have to test the system. You have to do it, they have to bump it, they have to make sure that the energy goes into the grid, it doesn't cause a problem. It's called witness testing. And then from that, we'll then get our authorization, what they call PTO, or permission to operate. And we're expecting that the project will be fully producing energy by this July. That is it. And we're feeling confident in saying that because to date, we couldn't get National Grid to commit to a construction schedule on their end. And we finally have that construction schedule. And we are seeing, like I said, they're mobilizing this month. So that's all positive progress.
Okay, thank you.
Was that clear? Make
Yes.
sense? Okay.
Yes, it was. Thank you. Other questions from the board, or we now have some visitors in the room as well. So, anybody have any questions for them?
As long as both.
This is Rich. I had a question. I'm sorry, John, were you asking?
No, go ahead, Rich.
So I don't think we've come across this before where a project has, for lack of a better term, kind of avoided a pilot. And I guess maybe I just didn't understand why that was done. I realized there was I think you said there was some new legislation. But why wouldn't you have originally gone the pilot route?
Yeah, Tim, maybe I can speak to that, from our discussions yesterday. So Rich, to your question, I think Tim and I recognize that this is a bit unorthodox. When New Energy Equity took the project over, I would just account for differing philosophies as to how to approach the pilot. So the view was whether, on one hand, they were going to watch the development of the tax model, which spans several years and 2 rounds of litigation to see, is that better off than a pilot? Some developers took the position that, if this is going to be the model and the model's favorable, maybe it's not worth a pilot under 487, right? Maybe it's not worth the effort to negotiate those pilots. They did, I think, initially explore 487 pilots, and between the jurisdictions, there were differing views by the taxing jurisdictions, town, county, school, village. Some were not familiar, I think, and I didn't have interface with any of them because we weren't involved, and this is all from New Energy Equity, but the county said, well, we're really not familiar, the IDA may be a better route, and the town and the village and the school all had sort of conflicting views as to how to approach a pilot, and I think that coupled with the complexities of the model when New Energy came to us, we said, well, the IDA would be one entity, right? One entity with an application process. Your investors want a 25-year pilot. This is the only way you can get that. So this would be the route that we recommend. It's the route that they took up once we were retained. So I think it was just getting everybody on board on their side and at the local jurisdiction, that this is the most sensible route for everybody.
So back to the,
When this whole thing started, are you saying that either the town or village or school district did not want to enter into a pilot, or the developer did not want to enter into a pilot?
Neither. I think initially and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, the developer, New Energy Equity, was exploring whether taxes or a pilot were more favorable. When they explored a potential pilot with the jurisdictions, they got mixed signals because it seemed like at least some of them were not familiar with that and were deferring to the IDA as sort of the resource that people use for these projects. So I think ultimately those items, and then when they came to us, our direction was go to the IDA.
okay.
John, I think you had a question.
Was there another question?
The town and the village are both on board with this, because what we were told before, it was supposed to be built totally in the town, and it got carried into the village. They didn't know about it at the time. Did I hear that right? There was some messed up.
No. That's, back when the project was permitted, it was permitted within both entities. So both were very familiar with the project before it got constructed. Both had to approve the portion that fell within their jurisdiction.
That wasn't brought up when I talked to either the mayor or the supervisor.
Okay, thank you.
And just on that question, we do have the host community agreements. Tim and Dr. Clark both confirm respectively that the jurisdictions are on board. And as I mentioned earlier, we're working to close those out. So I think we got the green light from them.
Yeah, they both shared those with me, so I've seen that.
Okay. Other questions?
You take one.
Yeah, Mike, this is Mike Healy, one of our county legislators that is visiting today.
How about your bond? I mean, a 25-year pilot, that's quite a long pilot. What kind of bond are you putting up?
Decommissioning bond, Tim.
Yeah, so there should be, I'll double check on that, and it's a fair question, but as part of the conditions was to have a decommissioning bond in place and a program together. So because the project is stated as that, I'll double check on that paperwork, but that's our standard process, is to have a decommissioning bond in place.
Well, given the length of time, I would think it'd have to be substantial. Given the length
I'm
of
sorry, I have a
time,
hard time hearing.
given the length of time, I would think it'd have to be substantial.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The bond will mimic the operation period of the project and the operating period. Absolutely. It's not for like the first 5 years and then it stops. It'll mimic the operation period.
Thank you.
I wasn't involved with the permitting or development, but when I am called to be land use council, permitting council, those decommissioning bonds are, through the life of the project generally, and that's what the case is here. So there'll be no risk to the localities involved if there are any issues.
Okay. Other questions?
Just one more. And what would be the life expectancy of the project?
Yeah, the operating term or the lease agreement that we have with our landowners is for 25 years with the option to extend it for another 2 5-year periods. So it could be up to 35 years that it could be operating. Ultimately, what happens is at that end of that original operating term, it's determined whether or not, is at that time, is the plant in good condition? How's the relationship with everybody? Is there still a viable market for selling electricity to? And all those conditions are taken into place. And then an extension can be made to continue to operate the project. And then once that's done, once those extensions are made, the project would be decommissioned and removed from the property.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Other discussion? No? Okay. Well, we thank you very much for that explanation, and we'll move ahead with what we need to do here. So Craig, do you want to?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay,
Appreciate your time today. Thank you very much for hearing us.
thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks.